Well, hello and welcome back to Lap of the World. I'm not actually even going to talk about what this channel's overall mission is, driving every road course in the world, because we're not actually going to talk about any of that today. No, today we are doing, I'm starting a push to get the side project done so I can get back to doing the thing that I actually want to be doing, which is driving my cars on racetracks all over the world. So, with that said, what we're going to do today is going to sound a whole lot like an everything wrong with my cheap Lamborghini video, but it's not, I promise. So, starting at the back end of the car, let's talk about what is maybe not quite perfect on my less than expensive Lamborghini. Beginning with where some champ decided to reuse crush washers on this oil line fitting on the transaxle. They pulled the same trick, presumably the same person, on the drain plug, hence the drain pan down there. So I've got to change the transmission fluid effectively because pulling this banjo bolt out and as well as the drain plug itself out is going to result with all the fluid coming out anyway. So I have a box of sweet German transmission fluid goodness, which is apparently what's specified for this car, that I will be putting back in it once I've drained the transmission fluid, which is probably perfectly fine, for the sole purpose of replacing about $4 worth of copper crush washers. Moving somewhat vertically from the transmission case down there, we're now looking at the unmuffled X pipe that currently constitutes the exhaust system on the car. And as loud and mean as it sounds, it unfortunately has to go because right now the car is at all times way too loud for any purpose that I would like to use it for. Whether that be leaving the neighborhood politely at 6 in the morning to get to an autocross where it would then be too loud for the sound policies and I wouldn't be able to horse around with it anyway. So, to that end, I have procured this guy from eBay. Now, this is not, well, it is and isn't a stock exhaust for a Gallardo. It is a stock exhaust for, I think it came off of like an '08 Spider, but it would not be the stock exhaust for an '04 and '05 car, which means there's a little bit of fiddling involved to get these things moved up here, so that the new hangers, or rather the brackets on the new tailpipe will line up with where they are. Now, fortunately, I found some nice instructions on the internet that show how this can be accomplished with basically just one flat plate of aluminum right there with a couple of extra holes drilled in it. And it will use these factory bolt holes, so I'm not actually trying to drill anything new into the car, which is awesome. What's not awesome is this crusty coolant line, which was emergency spliced in order to make it from Oklahoma back to Tennessee. And it runs from the expansion tank over here down to a fitting that is behind the block and intake manifold and up against the firewall down there. Now, I have previously owned an SW20 MR2 Turbo, and we've had a particular coolant bypass line that we lovingly refer to as the hose from hell. I'm not sure if this is going to be that bad, but I have to think it's the Italian equivalent. And that's super unfortunate. But not as unfortunate as what could happen if I happen to spill a bunch of fuel or overflow the fuel tanks right now, because the rubber boot that is normally around here to catch any spills or overflow is torn a whole bunch. You see that hole up there, and then there's a crack underneath there. Those all open up and dump directly into the engine compartment, whereon things would dump directly on top of the fuel tank. And then something you can't see, there's a heat shield right there on this side of the fuel tank, and that's because the exhaust headers are directly underneath this black cross member. And that's really, kind of appalling. Almost as appalling as the propensity for people to mangle battery terminal connections. The positive terminal over here, I'm not going to touch it because I'm not wearing gloves and I might be grounded at some point in time, but Just take my word for it that it is unfortunately loose. Loose enough that I fully expected to probably cause electrical issues down the road if not corrected. And you don't even want to know what Lamborghini wants for that particular part connected to the wire. So I'm probably going to have to do some sort of, either pull it off and see if I can resurrect it, recondition it, the cable side connector, or just replace it and clamp the wire onto something else. Now, that seems like a relatively minor issue, probably not quite as minor as another common ailment with early production Gallardos, which is the rear view mirror, or rather the auto-dimming fluid that is in the rear view mirror. Now, I don't know if you can tell, in this, you can probably see the line of demarcation here about where my finger is. Above that, it's a little bit different shade than below that. And that's because some of the fluid has leaked out. And unfortunately, this fluid is not very friendly, as you can see by what's happened to the mirror switch down here. Now, fortunately, the damage to the console seems to be pretty limited to that area, and I think I've spotted some tricks for reconditioning that, but it is kind of unfortunate. What's more unfortunate is the amount of wrap residue left on this car. You can see right here all this black stuff is leftover adhesive from where the car was previously wrapped blue. Now, the person I bought it from peeled the wrap, but I'm not really sure how good of a job they did, or if they were using, a heat gun or didn't use a heat gun or whatever, because everywhere, and I'm finding these little leftover, wrap dingleberries everywhere on the car. So what I'm probably going to do then is, once I have all the mechanical stuff taken care of with the car, is I'm going to take it over to a local detailer who I trust to do things right, and have him go over the car, get rid of all the, anything that could be readily visible. I'm not going to ask him to take any panels off the car to get stuff that may be around, down, or behind things. But just the stupid places where it's like underneath the side view mirrors, in the little door jams and stuff like that. Take care of all of that, go back over the car, probably just correct the paint at the same time, and then put some kind of coating on it, just to set me a nice, set me up with a nice starting point from which I can attempt to maintain it, and hopefully not need any sort of professional help again for at least a few years. But having said that, and gone from the sort of the sublime to the ridiculous, all in all, the good news is most of this stuff doesn't require expensive parts. It just requires a little effort on my part. I bought this, exhaust secondhand on eBay. Screaming deal on that. I will sell the X-Pipe when I take it off to somebody who wants to make their car spit fire and be loud all the time, and they can go and do that wherever they want. It's actually got a nice, looks like some kind of ceramic coating on it as well. So, it's a good part. That's just, not for my purposes. But with that said, the other projects I'm working on, though, cosmetically, I think I've managed to find a paint match for the powder coat on the wheels, so I can take care of my center caps. Here, let me grab one of those. So hopefully, I'll put this next to my face so it's in focus. This paint color seems to match pretty well, so hopefully that will, I will have a complete package with wheels and center caps there that are approximately the same color, or close enough you can't tell. And then the other thing I'm working on currently is getting the VHT tint off of the lights. I was kind of experimenting with a side marker here. I may actually take that over to another, either the same or a different local detailer who has high-speed polishers and a finer touch with that kind of thing than I might, because taillights for these things are freaking expensive. I considered just replacing them. I think even if it was the NSX in the same position, I probably would have just replaced them by now, but that's the cost of doing business here. So anyhow, that's where I'm at right now. I think I've gotten the suspension stuff, like ride height wise, sorted out. I've dealt with that. I may do a separate video on that because it was an interesting process. I think I ended up being less sophisticated about it than I was intending to originally, so that may or may not see the light of day, but yeah, so I'm doing a big push on this. I'm going to try and get the coolant hose is what I'm going to tackle next, because I think that's going to be the biggest pain in the butt. Once I'm done with the coolant hose, I should at that point in time receive the replacement crush washers, which I've ordered. And then at the same time, I should also get the little exhaust. I need some extensions for these the outlets down here, so they actually go to the muffler and don't just, or rather go through the little finisher pipes on the bumper, rather than just firing the exhaust out behind the bumper and melting it potentially. So yeah, that's all kind of work in progress. I apologize for the sort of whirlwind of a video today, but I just kind of wanted to, I was getting frustrated with my lack of progress on a lot of things, so I figured I would at least update my viewership as far as why you haven't seen new tracks in a minute and why I haven't been actually driving this thing around. Either of those things would be, I think, acceptable fodder at this point in time, doing of anything. And we do have a, fortunately though, I think your boredom with me may be cured in the next week or so though, because Liz and I got invited to a pretty special event, and that we'll talk about next time. But for now, I got to get back to work because I'm really I'm ready to be done with some projects. But in the meantime, I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World. Consider subscribing if you like seeing me thrash around like this, or just want to get a notification next time I'm back at the track. And on that note, we will see you in that next video, if not out at the track.